welcome. Wherever you are, whenever you are now a part of community, a community that gathers not limited by the boundaries of time or space, gathers to worship, to explore, to serve, to learn, to experience community and fellowship. My name is Melissa Bailey Kirk. I'm the pastor of Gashland United Methodist Church in the Northland of Kansas City. And I'm glad you're here. I pray that all of us experience the Spirit of God in this time, that we imagine that as we breathe in the blessing of Spirit, and that we breathe out the love that Spirit brings to all of us. Amen. I have been enjoying the deep purple irises that are popping up in the front yard of the parsonage, planted there by someone years ago, probably someone that I don't know and will never meet. But boy, those irises are beautiful. They wave at me, rich pops of color as I stand at the kitchen window. I wonder if the first garden, the one that we call Eden, had irises. Maybe rings of irises or daylilies or daffodils encircling the fruit trees there, bringing pleasure and joy to all of the creatures that walked the garden. I confess I'm a little bit envious of the first humans that walked the garden. They walked with God in the cool of the afternoon. Breezes whispering through the trees, blowing against their face, full access to the creator of the universe. They could ask God anything they wanted. I mean, why is the sky blue? Or for what purpose did you make that critter? Or what makes a geode sparkle? While I'm confessing I might as well go all the way, I'm more than a little bit jealous of the women and men that hung out with Jesus, that traveled dusty roads with him, that slept under the stars in the same space where he was, that listened to him, that heard his words firsthand, full access to God incarnate. They could ask Jesus anything they wanted. Like, how are you going to fix this mess? Or how can you be God and be like me at the same time? And why do bad things happen to good people? I mean, aren't there some questions that you want to ask God, that you want to ask Jesus? Like, what is the deal with suffering? Or how precisely did the resurrection happen? When I was a child, I remember wanting to ask Jesus if he ever disobeyed his parents or acted up in Hebrew school. Then there are more serious questions like, how do I know what is the right choice, the righteous choice? How do I know, God, where and how you want me to serve? Or why do we have things like viruses, tsunamis, hurricanes, tornadoes, mudslides, floods? How can I make this dollar stretch to the end of the month, which seems so far away? Or is there any hope that humanity will ever be restored to that first garden where there was perfect love of God, love of one another, self, and all of creation? It does seem, from my perspective, that those first garden dwellers and those first disciples were blessed to walk with God in the garden, to travel with Jesus in his ministry. No, it didn't stay like that forever. The first humans had to say goodbye, and Jesus had to say goodbye. A goodbye that's recorded in the Gospel of John in the 14th chapter. It was a goodbye that took place over the course of an evening around an evening meal, a dinner table, if you will. An evening meal that included Jesus and all of his friends, the ones who knew him best, the ones who loved them best. And that evening began in the strangest way. It began with Jesus kneeling at the feet of each disciple, washing feet and drying feet, showing them firsthand what he meant by the new commandment that he gave them, the commandment to love one another the way you see me loving you right now as a servant. in humility that's grounded in faith. Sensing that the disciples did not understand the depth of Jesus' own commitment to love all people in this way, Jesus shared the truth that he would suffer and die. He revealed to them the mystery of his relationship with God, that he and God are one, inseparable, and assured them that their experiences of Jesus had been at the same time experiences of God. And then Jesus went on to reveal another mystery, that of his ongoing presence with them, a presence that would not be disrupted by his impending death. May our hearts be open anew, afresh, to these words from Jesus. If you love me, you will keep my commandments. And I will ask Abba God, and God will give you another advocate to be with you forever. This is the Spirit of truth, whom the world cannot receive because it neither sees nor knows the Spirit. You know the Spirit. You know the Spirit because the Spirit abides with you. Even now, the Spirit abides with you, and the Spirit will be in you. I will not leave you orphaned. I am coming to you. In a little while, the world will no longer see me, but you will see me. Because I live, you also will live. On that day, you will know that I am in God, and you are in me, and I am in you. Those who love me, said Jesus, are those who have my commandments and keep them. Those who love me will be loved by Abba God, and I will love them and reveal myself to them. In the hullabaloo of questions and protests and worry that surely followed the earlier pronouncement of his death, Jesus began to comfort the disciples with the truth that they had everything that they needed to live without his physical presence, though they did not yet know it. And I can imagine that from around that table, questions were whispered or shouted in panic. How can we live without you, Jesus? And maybe there was one voice or two that asked the more profound question, how can we love without you, Jesus? For Jesus began these words of comfort by reminding the disciples of what it meant to follow him. First and foremost, if you love me, you will keep my commandments. Imagine the ears of the disciples still ringing and their hearts still fluttering from the memory of Jesus kneeling at their feet, washing them and teaching them. This is what it means to love. This is what it means to love. All of Jesus' ministry, all of his preaching, all of his teaching, all of his being can be captured in one word, and that is love. Indeed, Jesus taught that all of the laws of Hebrew scriptures and all of the teachings and prophecy of the Hebrew prophets hung on one commandment, that all love God with everything that they have, that they love others, and that they love themselves. Love, in all of its iterations, love that is expressed in gentleness, love that is spoken bluntly, love shown in compassion, love shown in sacrifice, soft love, hard love, love that confirms, love that challenges. What would it be like? What would our church be like? What would the world be like if we kept this commandment? We who say we follow Jesus kept this one commandment in our heart along with the Spirit of God, the Spirit of truth. What if love and the commandment to love was the first thing that we considered when faced with a choice? If the voice of the Spirit was the voice we most trusted? We know, living in a time of pandemic, that there are situations where it seems that loving in this way is beyond difficult because it means sacrifice. Sacrifices that we make in order to protect others. sacrifices that we make in order to protect ourselves, sacrifices that we make in order to honor the goodness of all God's creation. That night at the dinner table, maybe his hands were still a little bit damp from the foot washing. Jesus looked into the faces of his dearest disciples, and he knew. He knew how easy it is to forget who we are. He knew just how quickly even the most committed Christ followers can allow something to become more important than love of God, of self, of others. But rather than toss them aside in disgust, rather than toss us aside in disgust, God's essence of creative power flows through Jesus, gives us the gift of God's own Spirit, God's own self, to support us, to encourage us, to back us up, to believe in us when we can't believe in ourselves, to teach us, to remind us, to call us back to our truest God-created self. We know, living in this time of pandemic, that circumstances can take on a life of their own and wipe away all memory of Jesus' steadfast call to love. The commandment to love that is held in our hearts, it begins to fade, and it begins to take a back seat to what? What is it today that occupies your mind? What idea or habit, what concern, what fear has become or is becoming more important than Jesus' command to love God, others, and yourself? More important than doing what is loving for yourself, for others, and for God. The good news is that none of these have to become so big that they take over your heart or identify your character. God gives us an advocate, the Spirit of truth, encouraging, reminding, calling us back to life in the garden, life of communion, life of love. I have with me a variety of prayer boxes and jars and bowls that I have made or have been given to me over the years. And I want to invite you to consider a new prayer practice. If you don't have a prayer box, bowl, or container, just consider using a little container that you might have around your home or your apartment. It could be a little plastic container or a little glass. You might even make your own out of paper if you choose. What would it be like if when this week you begin to feel yourself being overwhelmed by something that pulls you away from love of God, self, and others? What if when you begin to feel yourself being pulled away by something, you wrote that down or drew a picture of it, somehow symbolized it, the worry, the idea, the obsession, the habit, and you placed it in your prayer box or bowl, your prayer container, with just a simple prayer: hold this for me, Spirit. Hold this for me, Spirit. And imagine the Spirit of God then holding your concern with great respect and compassion, and infusing it with divine love, transforming it and transforming you so that you become newly aware that you do indeed have everything you need to love. Love that is shared from our hearts. Love that is the source of hope. Love that embodies one, God, Jesus, Spirit, for the good of others, for the sake of others. Friends, may you know that God, Jesus, Spirit, one, is always with you, no matter what. May you know that you have a companion, an advocate that is not only with you, but is in you and for you. And may you entrust your fears and your worries to Holy One. And may you love, love, love with abandon. Amen.